The studio lights gleamed brightly against a backdrop of polished wood and deep red velvet. The clock marked the start of the hour, and the audience still buzzed from the band's lively jazz intro as the host leaned toward his microphone with that familiar half-grin that always hinted at mischief. "Tonight," he began, voice smooth but edged with playfulness, "we got someone who never hesitates to tell the world how it should be. So naturally, we're bound to disagree about everything. Please welcome Jane Fonda." Thunderous applause filled the studio as the actress-turned-activist stepped onto the set. She waved confidently, smile wide, dressed in a vivid green jacket that shimmered under the lights. Her energy was undeniable, half movie star, half movement. Bill Maher rose to greet her, hand outstretched, his smile sharp as ever. "Jane Fonda, ladies and gentlemen, the conscience of Hollywood, whether Hollywood asked for one or not." The audience laughed. She laughed too as she took her seat opposite him. "You invite me here and start with that?" she teased. "It's a compliment," he replied, eyes glinting. "Sort of." The band hit a quick riff, punctuating the moment. Laughter rolled to the crowd, but beneath the humor there was already a flicker in the air. The kind of tension that sparks when two people from different worlds share one stage. The opening exchange went smoothly enough. Bill asked about her new environmental documentary, and Jane spoke passionately about activism, community, and the strength of protest. The audience nodded along, absorbed. It felt like a typical late-night segment, until Bill leaned forward, tapping his cue cards thoughtfully against a desk. "You said something interesting in your film," he began. "That silence equals violence. That not speaking up makes you part of the problem. You really believe that?" Jane didn't hesitate. "Of course. If people see injustice and stay silent, they're giving permission for it to continue." Bill smiled faintly. "So, by that logic, anyone who doesn't line up behind your exact list of causes is the enemy?" The audience murmured. Jane kept smiling. "No, I'm saying neutrality helps the oppressor." "Right," Bill said, leaning back. "But you're assuming people stay neutral because they're evil, not because they're just trying to survive the rent." The crowd gasped softly. A few even clapped. Jane crossed one leg over the other, steady and composed. "You can't separate the personal from the political. And you can't turn every dinner table into a press conference," Bill countered. "People are exhausted, Jane. Not everyone has the energy to fight on Twitter for 15 hours a day." Laughter rippled through the room. Jane raised an eyebrow. "So ignorance is a pass?" Bill spread his hands. "No, but humility deserves one. Maybe the world would calm down if people stopped screaming and started listening again." The studio went quiet for a heartbeat. Then applause broke out, scattered at first, then swelling. Bill didn't gloat. He simply leaned back, satisfied. Jane leaned forward, her voice steady. "Listening is fine," she said, "but it doesn't change anything. Neither does outrage without action." Bill shot back. "You post, you shout, you trend for a day, and then what? Did the planet heal? Did the poor suddenly get health care? No. People just got dopamine and moved on." The audience roared, cheers, claps, a few whoops in the back rows. Jane studied him, chin lifted. "You really think cynicism fixes anything?" Bill chuckled. "No, but it keeps me sane." Laughter rolled through the studio again. The red light above the camera blinked as the floor manager signaled for a break, but no one wanted to cut. The conversation had escaped its script. It was raw, unpredictable, magnetic. Jane tilted her head. "Cynicism is just fear dressed as wisdom." Bill pointed at her, impressed. "Good line. Wrong diagnosis. I'm not afraid of change. I'm afraid of mobs pretending they are change." The band struck a quick cymbal tap. The audience cheered again. For a moment, it felt like a boxing match. Her calm idealism versus his relentless logic. Two philosophies trading punches under studio lights. She smiled unshaken. "You make it sound like people wanting justice are a mob." He smiled right back. "When justice turns into performance, it becomes theater, and I already have enough actors on my show." Laughter exploded. Even Jane laughed, shaking her head. "You're impossible." "Not impossible, Bill said, just allergic to slogans. The floor director finally waved them to commercial. Bill turned toward the camera. Stick around. Folks, when we come back, we'll see if Jane Fonda can convince me to save the world before my next coffee break. The band launched into music as the audience clapped and cheered. Beneath the applause, there was electricity, a sense that this wasn't over. The real conversation was waiting just beyond the break. The music faded. The red light blinked back on. The audience hushed, ready for round two. Bill shuffled his cards theatrically. We're back with Jane Fonda, he announced, who says the world could be saved if we all yell at once. Jane laughed. Not yell, organize. Same decibel level. Bill quipped. The crowd laughed again, the tension cracking, then tightening once more as Jane leaned forward. You joke, but people are suffering. You can't joke your way out of that. I'm not joking about it, he said, tone steady. I'm joking so people can hear it. There's a difference. The front row burst into applause. Jane held up a hand. Comedy doesn't change systems. Maybe not, Bill replied, but it keeps us sane while the systems change slower than a DMV line. Laughter rippled through the crowd again. Jane smiled but didn't yield. You think laughing at the problem is enough? No, he said, but it's better than pretending outrage is action. That line stopped the room. Even the camera operator whispered, Wow. The audience reacted with a low murmur that grew into thunderous clapping. Jane exhaled. You make activism sound like vanity. I make performative activism sound like vanity, he corrected. There's a difference between marching for justice and hashtagging for followers. Gasps, applause, murmurs of agreement and disapproval. The crowd was split down the middle. Jane smiled thinly. You're cynical. Bill leaned closer. No, realistic. I've seen real heroes. They work quietly. They don't film themselves handing out sandwiches. The audience erupted again, laughter, cheers, whistles. Jane crossed her arms, shaking her head but grinning. You're addicted to being contrary. Someone has to be the seatbelt on this speeding car. Bill said, If everyone's shouting, go faster, we hit a wall. The applause came louder this time. The guitars hit a quick riff, accenting the moment like a punchline. Jane tried a new angle. You act like caring is a crime. Bill spread his hands. Caring is beautiful, but moral superiority? That's just ego in a halo. The audience howled, half shocked, half thrilled. The energy was electric now. Every line hit like a cymbal crash. Every pause calculated by instinct. Jane laughed, shaking her head. You'll never change. He smiled. And yet, somehow, people still tune in, hoping I will. The crowd broke into laughter again, a standing ripple ending in cheers. As the brake light flashed, Bill gestured toward it. We'll be right back. Jane's going to try to save my soul during the commercials. The audience roared. She threw up her hands, laughing. That'll take more than a commercial break. The camera faded out on their smiles. By dawn the next morning, the clip had detonated across social media. Editors titled it Comedy Meets Activism. Who won? Millions replayed the moment when Bill said, Outrage is an action. It turned into a meme overnight, captioned beneath reaction GIFs, quoted on mugs, and echoed across late-night feeds. One corner of the internet hailed it as a masterclass in civil disagreement. Another corner accused it of being too safe. Activists wrote long threads dissecting every word, while commentators praised how both had stayed sharp, articulate, and respectful even while sparring. This, one columnist wrote, is what public discourse used to look like. Two people disagreeing without self-destructing. Inside the network offices, the analytics board glowed red with numbers that looked almost unreal. Replay counts were breaking records. Advertising slots for the next broadcast doubled in price overnight. Producers have joked about scheduling philosophical cage matches every month. Bill Maher didn't celebrate. He walked the hallway quietly with a mug of coffee, nodding to crew members who congratulated him. The applause still felt too loud. Jane's final words echoed in his mind. Caring isn't vanity. They stayed longer than the laughter. That evening, a follow-up panel aired. Commentators appeared in three little boxes on screen, debating what the exchange had meant. A culture critic called it the night honesty became entertainment. A younger influencer countered, saying Bill was too smug. A retired journalist smiled faintly. At least we're talking about ideas again instead of outfits. The clip rolled again behind them, replaying the same 5-minute stretch where argument became revelation. Every replay made the same point. Disagreement could be captivating if people stayed calm long enough to finish a sentence. Meanwhile, Jane Fonda began her own media circuit. On a morning podcast, she spoke with her usual poise. "I didn't lose that debate," she said. "I think we both won. He got his laughs. I got my message out." Listeners flooded the comment section, calling it the healthiest ego check on TV. Bill saw the quote later that day and smiled. He called his producer. "Book her again next season," he said. "You sure?" the producer asked. "It could feel like a rematch." "Good," Bill replied. "People like sequels." Across town, universities began requesting permission to use the episode in communication courses. One professor wrote, "Students respond sincerity. They can tell when disagreement is real." Another requested behind-the-scenes footage for research on audience behavior. For the first time in years, the show's inbox was full of thank yous instead of complaints. A teacher wrote, "My students watched the debate and then actually talked instead of tweeting." A high school debate coach said he played the segment before tournaments to remind his team that tone mattered more than volume. Bill read those messages in his dressing room after filming another episode. He leaned back, eyes on his reflection in the mirror framed with studio lights. The man staring back looked tired but content. "Maybe the real joke," he murmured, "is that truth still sells." Months passed, but the echo of that night never faded. Producers referenced it constantly. Whenever a new guest sat on the crimson couch, someone whispered, "Remember the Fondale episode? Keep it human." At the network's annual gala, a montage of season highlights played across giant screens. Between musical acts and bloopers, the clip appeared again. Bill leaning forward, Jane gesturing. The audience caught between laughter and reflection. Applause swept the ballroom before the video even ended. Later that night, the network president approached Bill with a champagne glass. "You turned a talk show into a philosophy seminar," he said. Bill smirked. "Don't tell the advertisers." Jane Fonda was there too, wearing the same green jacket that had become a cultural symbol in memes. When they crossed paths near the buffet, she grinned. "Still allergic to slogans?" "Only the loud ones," he said. They posed for a photo, smiling with easy camaraderie. The flash froze a moment, and within hours, the picture went viral. Two people who had once argued fiercely now standing side by side. Commenters captioned it, "Disagree better." The following spring, both were invited to co-host a media conference titled Confrontation in an Age of Noise. The auditorium was packed. Students, journalists, comedians, activists. Bill spoke first. "We didn't plan to start a movement," he said. "We just forgot to stay polite long enough for it to matter." Jane followed with a softer tone. "He calls it forgetting. I call it remembering what adults sound like." The hall erupted in applause. For the next hour, they talked, argued, teased, and laughed, a live demonstration of healthy disagreement in action. Afterward, a student raised a hand. "Do you really think TV can change minds?" Jane looked at Bill. He shrugged. "Maybe not, but it can remind people they still have them." That line became the conference's closing quote, and later, the tagline of a national campaign promoting civil discourse. Back on the marker hour, the crew framed the sentence and hung it near the studio entrance. Every guest walking in could see it etched in silver letters. Television can't change minds. It can remind people they still have them. Years later, journalists would call that season a turning point. Streaming services archived the episode under classic television moments. New hosts cited it as inspiration to balance humor with honesty. As for Bill and Jane, they stayed in touch. Every few months, they traded emails about books, projects, and politics. Neither tried to convert the other anymore. They'd outgrown the need. One night, long after Studio B had gone dark, Bill sat alone rewatching the original footage. He noticed something he hadn't before. The silence right after his last line, before the audience erupted. That half-second carried everything. The respect, the shock, the understanding that both of them had been right in their own way. He smiled faintly, reached over, and switched off the monitor. "End scene," he said softly. The words felt like applause.